On the eve of their second preseason game, there's plenty of roster spots still up for grabs for the Seahawks. Which players have the most at stake gearing up for Friday's contest against the Chiefs at Lumen Field? I'll be diving in here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in, whether you're in nearby Graham, Washington, or down in Moab, Utah. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We are on the eve of Seattle's second preseason game. The Kansas City Chiefs coming to town for a Friday night battle at Lumen Field. Going to be diving into which players have the most at stake going into this second preseason tune-up. We'll be tackling your questions in a Thursday mailbag, and I'll be chatting with seventh-round pick Ricky White III as he wraps up his first training camp and continues to fight for a spot on Seattle's active roster. Without further ado, let's get to it. Now for your lead story here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. We've got the second game of 3 in the preseason for the Seahawks on tap coming up tomorrow night. Seahawks taking on the Chiefs. May or may not see Patrick Mahomes and company, whether you interpret Andy Reid's words a certain way. You might think there's going to be some starters. Maybe there won't be. We do expect the Seahawks are going to be playing Sam Darnold and quite a few of their starters for at least a series or two in this game to get their feet wet heading towards the regular season. With that said, it's still a preseason game, which really boils down to the battles for final roster spots. Kansas City's got that going on. Seattle certainly has got that going on. So who's got the most at stake in this game? And this isn't just for roster spots. It's also for practice squad consideration and roster spots on other teams. I've got 10 players here that I'm going to be watching most closely against Kansas City. And we'll switch things up. Usually offense goes first. Let's start on the defensive side of the football. And for me, the first name that jumps out, I'm going to be watching. Of course, we've talked a lot about Jared Ivey this week. I think Jared Ivey's in pretty good footing to make this roster. Of course, he's going to be a guy that I'm watching in this game. I love watching the way that he plays. But there's a couple of other defensive linemen for the Seahawks in the undrafted rookie ranks that have kind of come on as of late. And most notably, it's been number 70, J.R. Singleton. And this was a player when the Seahawks announced their undrafted rookie class. I was really intrigued by Singleton when I went in and watched some Iowa State tape. The Cyclones were really good last year. They had a number of players who got drafted in the NFL draft. Singleton, obviously not one of them, but he was an all Big 12 caliber player at Iowa State. Had some pass rushing production, had good numbers in the backfield, and you're starting to see that now show up for him in these practices, and he's been feeding off of playing next to Jared Ivey. Those two are really building a symbiotic relationship up front in terms of knowing what the other's going to do and having chemistry. Those two guys have been going and making plays a lot when they are on the field together. And Singleton had a decent game against the Raiders last week. This is another really good opportunity for him. I think he's a practice squad guy, but this is a great opportunity for him to secure that opportunity in Seattle and potentially be a guy that can make some contributions, maybe even later this year for the Seahawks if they need depth along the defensive line. The same can be said for Anthony Campbell coming out of Miami. Now, unlike Singleton, this is a player at a college level. The stats don't match the physical ability that you would expect from Campbell. He did not have good pass rushing numbers. This is not a guy that had many tackles at the college level, and yet he is a specimen. He is a physical freak. He looks like a defensive end instead of a defensive tackle. Really well cut, high muscle density. We're starting to see the physical tools translate into production and practice. He has dominated one-on-ones the last couple padded practices Seattle has had, and he has really started to shine getting into the backfield and making plays. talk about a wild card. Again, not a guy that had much production in college, didn't play a lot of snaps in Miami, but when you turn on the tape, there are little flashes, and now we're starting to see that show up. So I think he's another one. Right now, he's playing for a practice squad spot, but I think both these players could potentially be players the Seahawks bring back, especially if they have really good finishes to the preseason. They're going to get a lot of snaps against Kansas City. This is a really good dress rehearsal for both of them. Moving away from the defensive line, Jamie Sheriff, this is an incredibly important game for him, and I'm just hoping he's going to be out there. I would think he's going to be. He practiced in the padded practice a couple days ago. He practiced the day after. I think he's over whatever minor injury that he was nursing, but this is a crucial game for him because he's making that transition from being just an off-ball, or not an off-ball, a edge defender, and then moving to the off-ball position that he had never played at any level previously. He's trying to become that hybrid do-it-all linebacker that Mike McDonald likes to have in the back end of his roster, but we didn't get to see him play against the Raiders last week. We don't know what he's going to look like against another team in that off-ball role. So if he wants to be on the 53, he's got to go out and he's got to play at a really high level. There's certainly room for him to go get that with the depth concern Seattle has at off-ball linebacker right now, but he's got to go prove it against other competition. He's still going to get some reps rushing off the edge as well. Certainly a name that I'm going to be watching closely in this game. And then in the secondary, two different players here in terms of what they're fighting for. I expect that Shaquille Griffin is going to be on this roster with the guaranteed money that the Seahawks paid him, but he's missed most of training camp. We just finally got to see him for a couple days, playing some snaps with the second team defense, had a nice pass breakup during the 7-on-7 period yesterday. So we're starting to see him make some plays, but he got here so late in the process. Josh Jobe, you can interpret Adam Durday's comments however you want, but he's had a really good training camp. He played well in the preseason opener, albeit getting lucky with that arm punt that he turned into an interception when the receiver had a couple steps on him. I think other than that, he has played pretty darn well. But this is very much an opportunity for Shaquille Griffin. I'm expecting he's going to get a handful of plays. He still only had a few practices under his belt, so Seattle's not going to throw him out there and have him play 35 snaps. That's not going to happen, but I expect to see him out there some as he's getting used to playing in this defense, and it is a chance for him to show that he deserves to be on this roster and be a guy that's in contention to get some snaps on defense for the Seahawks in his second stint with the team. And Jarek Reed, the second, he had a really good week. He's kind of one of those players that was starting to fall off the map a little bit in terms of making the roster. And just when you're ready to move on, he goes out and starts making plays. And you remember what he did before his ACL injury. Tyakata had kind of a rough game last week against the Raiders. Jarek Reed, whether or not it was his fault or not, there was a long touchdown where he was the safety on that side. I want to see him come out and play at a higher level here and really grab the bull by the horns and say, look, I'm one of the best special teams players. I can also contribute on defense if I'm needed, and I'm worth keeping a fifth safety. I want to see him go out there and earn that spot. As for the offensive side of the football, I don't feel like there's as many bubble spots that are necessarily up for grabs. Oddly enough, the offense, you've got starting jobs that are still being debated, but for me, Jacardia Wright coming off that really good preseason debut, he is not making this roster unless there's an injury in front of him. But this is very much another chance for him to show he could play for another team, or he could be on the practice squad for the Seahawks. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, I think he is on the bubble here because of Torrey Horton's emergence. I expect to see a lot of number one out there with the starters and maybe playing a little bit after that point because there's the possibility Seattle is considering moving on there. I think Ricky White III is building some momentum as well. I don't know if it's enough for him to make this football team now, but I do want to see what number 86 can do. He had a touchdown at the end of practice yesterday. He's a player that seems like he's coming through with more contributions with the third team offense, got a few second team reps this week. Feels like he's still at a difficult juncture here in terms of getting a spot in the 53, but now he can secure a practice squad spot. And we know the Seahawks have used practice squad receivers regularly, calling them up. The opportunity for him to still contribute this year for the Seahawks is very much there. And on the offensive line, two names that I'm going to be keeping close tabs on, different draft classes, but Mason Richmond, Christian Haynes, different reasons. Mason Richmond, I'm hoping we see him at the center position because he has been getting some snaps there this week. Mike McDonald, I asked him after practice yesterday if it would be possible to see him play some center in this game, considering he's only played a few practices. And he said, short answer, yes. So I'm looking forward to seeing if we see some Mason Richmond at that center position and if he can play like he did the last couple practices where there were some quality plays where you can see why the Seahawks made that move. And as for Christian Haynes, I don't think he's in the race for that right guard spot anymore. I've said it a bunch on this show. I think Anthony Bradford has won that starting job. Now Christian Haynes is fighting for his role on the roster, in my opinion. I think he makes this team, but he needs to go out and have a really good preseason game, whether he's playing right guard or left guard. It seems like that ship at center, at least for now, has sailed. So he's probably just going to be playing exclusively those two guard spots. But he has to show that he is that number 3 guard for this team. And if they have questions whether he is that guy or not coming out of these preseason games, that may put his spot in a little bit of a tenuous position. So I think this is a big game for Christian Haynes, even if he isn't necessarily in the mix anymore to win the right guard starting job. When I come back, it's been a while since we've had a mailbag. Since I'm riding solo, going to be tackling as many of your questions as we can in a Thursday mailbag. Let's get to it. That'll be coming up next here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by Yahoo Fantasy Football. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat and get your draft board ready. Buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, Rob, Nick, and I, we're all playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league like me. I've used Yahoo Fantasy for years. I love how smooth the draft day experience is. And Locked On's league's been running there on Yahoo for a while now. We've got easy setup, great app. The smack talk just hits different in the message boards, especially when I'm rubbing it in Robert Nick's face, getting the victory. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, and they dropped the Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week. We've got mailbag questions, so let's tackle as many of them as we can here. Our first one that's coming our way, courtesy of Mookie Alexander. You may know that name, the lead editor over at Field Goals, dishing out questions here on our show. Of the Seahawks 2024 offensive line draft picks, whose roster spot is most in jeopardy? Christian Haynes, Satawa Lamea, or Mike Jarrell? So I might surprise some people with who I pick on this one, but I would say Satawa Lamea is the one that is on the shakiest ground right now to make this football team. It's not Christian Haynes, and it's not Mike Jarrell. Let me explain my rationale real quick here. Christian Haynes, as disappointing as things have been at times, with him not really being able to step up to the competition against Anthony Bradford, not doing well enough at center to be considered at that position, the airmailed snaps. He had really good tape in that first preseason game against the Raiders. I thought Lamea really struggled. I thought it was maybe the weakest link on Seattle's offensive line when they were in. He lunged a number of blocks. He struggled in pass pro. Felt like he was not getting the job in the run game the way we saw him in the 6 starts that he had last year. And I think the fact that you are seeing Christian Haynes reemerge as the second string right guard, we are seeing Mason Richmond away from center. He's playing some guard. And Lamea has kind of just become that third string left guard in a lot of instances the last week. I do wonder if he is in a situation where he is very much battling to stay on this roster. He hasn't been in the mix for any of the starting jobs that have been open either. So Mike Jarrell, to me, the athleticism, Charles Cross injury, he's healthy enough that he can be out there for some things. He's going to be ready for week 1. But Mike Jarrell is still a very high upside player that I think they could not slip through the practice squad. And he looked good in the snaps he had the other day against the Raiders, has had a good camp for the most part. I just think that he and Haynes are going to be on this roster. I do wonder about Satawa Lamea at this point, though, with the struggles that he's had in training camp and in their first preseason game. This is a big game for him coming up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Chuck Warner at Chucko24. Are the Seahawks doing the same thing but expecting a different result with the center position and right guard? I mean, it's going to look that way because you really have mostly the same guys that are competing for those positions. But that's what John Schneider's been wanting to do all along here. He felt the coaching was the biggest issue last season, and it was a real problem for that offensive line. I have been incredibly impressed by what I've seen from John Benton and the way that he has coached these offensive linemen. How's that going to translate to regular season games? We're going to have to find that out. But I loved the way that this group, for the most part, got after it in the preseason opener. We'll see what they look like tomorrow night. But they didn't necessarily want to just go out and throw just a bunch of money at veterans that may or may not have made things that much better. They have invested draft picks, a ton of them, in the offensive line. So I think this was a real opportunity for them to be able to get a better coaching staff put around these offensive linemen that are already on the roster and try to develop them properly, which did not happen last season with a coaching staff that, for the most part, was jettisoned after just one season on the offensive side of the football. Nate B at HawkBlock12. Is Kobe Bryant a lock at strong safety, or has there been an open competition? Will they even his load with DeAnthony Bell and or Nick Emanwari? There's not a competition there. Kobe Bryant is the second starting safety with Julian Love. The difference here is going to be that you're going to see so much 3 and 4 safety looks from Mike Macdonald, particularly the 3 safety variety. I'm at this point calling Nick Emanwari an SE. He is a safety edge. That's what I'm calling him at this point. And maybe you could use the S for slot edge as well. That's what they're doing with it. But they're going to have those 3 guys in the field a ton. It's going to be really hard to get Emanwari off the field. But Kobe Bryant and Julian Love, those 2 guys, they are going to be playing every snap if they are healthy. That has been obvious in training camp, and I'm expecting to see both those guys build off what they did last season. Emanwari is just going to make this defense that much tougher for people to game plan for because of his very unique athletic traits, his size, and his skill set. Salvo Trucco with Tyrese Knight sidelined for unknown time. Do you see John Schneider possibly making a trade? One example, Noah Sewell from Chicago would make some sense. Looked good last week versus the Dolphins. I could see John Schneider maybe trying to hit the waiver wire at the end of the preseason when a bunch of teams are dumping off players. There might be a linebacker the Seahawks really like that gets cut, and it could be a rookie. It could be a guy that's second or third year that's been a special teamer. I could see that being a pride position where John Schneider's trying to make some moves to see if he can get a waiver claim and get somebody added to the roster. I just don't know that that's a position that they're going to be going out and trying to trade for somebody. Now, if they were in a position that Tyrese Knight is going to miss a huge chunk of the year, I think it would be a much different situation. You're calling some teams that might have starters that are entering the last year of their deal and seeing if you can make a trade with the money that they have. But all indications are Tyrese Knight's going to be ready for week 1. So I don't think you're going to see the Seahawks panic here and go out and trade for a starter caliber linebacker. I think that they're going to maybe be looking for some depth pieces that can be upgrades over what they currently have on the roster, though, on the waiver wire later this month. Elotato on X. If they play, what are your expectations for Boye Mafe, Derek Hall, and Byron Murphy? Do you think we will see glimmers of an alpha player finally come out of any of them? Or do you think they are what they are currently? Well, that last part of the question, I absolutely don't think that, especially with Byron Murphy II. I'm expecting to see the former first-round pick out of Texas really take off this year. And I think he's going to have more opportunities to show off his pass rushing ability from the interior. I'm expecting to see that from him. I think Mike Macdonald's going to create more of those chances for him. And better first down play is going to be a big part of that. As for Mafe and Derek Hall, look, Mafe's got really big things at stake here going to the last year of his contract. He is trying to make that big deal either in Seattle or with somebody else. Derek Hall's got 2 years left in his rookie deal. So he's trying to take another step forward after getting 8 sacks last year. He had none his rookie season. There have been glimmers that these guys can be 10-plus sack caliber players. It just hasn't been there consistently enough. I don't know that we're going to see anything in this preseason game that's going to suggest whether or not they're ready to take off. I mean, if Mafe comes out and gets 2 quick sacks, then they take him out, then we may very well be on the cusp of that breakthrough 4th season. Derek Hall could be in the same discussion, but I think Byron Murphy II is the one that of that triad I'm most excited to see go out there and get a few snaps in this preseason game before putting on his ball cap. Jack Armstrong, overall, so far, has the offense or defense won training camp? It seemed like it was defense heavy early, but more back and forth recently. Curious on your thoughts. So I'm going to say this. I don't keep tabs in terms of win-loss record for offense versus defense in training camp because I think that's silly. However, defenses normally are ahead of the curve, especially in this case, Mike Macdonald going to year 2 and having as many guys back as the Seahawks do on that side of the ball. Of course, they were going to be way ahead of where Sam Darnold and this offense was at with Klint Kubiak, but it was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be to open training camp just because of the fact all these guys were at OTAs. They got a lot done during the spring season on the practice field. And so it really has felt like that back and forth tug of war on offense versus defense. It really has felt like that most of training camp. I can't sit here and say that it has been a defensive dominated one, certainly not an offensive dominated one. Both sides of the ball have had their moments. And I think as Mike Macdonald hinted that that's really what the Seahawks are hoping for, obviously for the right reasons, but you want to see if the defense has a really good day, the offense comes back and gets them the next day. And then the defense comes back. And there has been a lot of that in this training camp. It has truly been a seesaw battle. So I think from that perspective, the Seahawks coaching staff is probably pretty excited about the fact that it has not been one side of the ball dominating throughout. There's been a true back and forth where it seems like there's adjustments, there's growth from previous practices, and you've just seen really competitive days, offense versus defense here for the Seahawks. Last question here real quick from Xavier Mitchell. With a good game last week against the Raiders, do you think Nehemiah Pritchett is in the hunt for the left cornerback competition? So if we're talking cornerback number 3, I still think it's Josh Job's job. Again, you can look at what was said by Adam Durday, and it seemed very lukewarm. But I can tell you that Josh Job, he's been getting his hands on a lot of footballs in training camp. I see a guy that has taken a step forward after last year. I have not seen a player that's come out and flatlined or taken a step back by any means. I think it is Josh Job's job to lose. But Nehemiah Pritchett is going to be putting pressure on Shaquille Griffin, and he may be putting pressure on Job down the line because he has looked really good. He had a pick last week where he baited the quarterback. He had another really nice pass breakup. He had a pass breakup yesterday that turned into an interception for DeAnthony Bell. He has been very active getting his hands on the football, and I just see a young man in year 2. The lights have come on in terms of confidence. He's playing at a much higher level from a confidence perspective, believing himself, understanding the defense, and he just looks much more comfortable back there. Mike Macdonald's happy with his progress. So I'm not going to sit here and say that he is in that competition in terms of having a chance to win it right now, but he's trending in the right direction, and that puts pressure on Josh Job. If he steps back and he isn't as good early in the season, Nehemiah Pritchett could absolutely be getting some snaps at some point for the Seahawks in those 3 cornerback looks when they're in nickel and dime sets. All right, when we come back, I had a chance to chat with Ricky White III at the Seahawks' final training camp practice yesterday. What did he have to say about his experience so far in Seattle, learning this new offense and developing a chemistry with Jalen Milroe and the rest of Seattle's quarterbacks? I'll be dishing out that interview coming up next here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by our friends over at Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k, property, or investment. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. When I first started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on fast food delivery. Now I'm budgeting smarter. I'm saving more for other expenses that pop up in my life. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use the Monarch app to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals, whether you have a partner or you're all on your own. Don't let the financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONNFL. Welcome back to the Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The Seahawks used 9 of their 11 draft picks back in April on offensive players, and that included 2 receivers. They drafted Torrey Horton in the 5th round. Horton has been a revelation throughout training camp. I believe he has locked up that number 3 receiver spot behind Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith-Njigba. Maybe Marquez Valdes-Scantling has something still to say about that, but it very much seems like that's Torrey Horton's job. As for the other receivers Seattle invested a pick in, 7th round selection, Ricky White III, it was a slow start, a slow burn to open training camp in his first camp in the NFL. Mostly was playing on the third team offense, not a lot of catches. It seemed like he was really in the background. You'd occasionally see 86 come through with a short reception, but generally was very quiet the first week and a half or so of camp. And he was not on my radar at that point in terms of making the 53. I thought it was still a possibility for the practice squad. He's a really good special teams player, so he's got that working for him. But the last week and change, we have seen our W3 really come through at the receiver position. He had a touchdown to end practice yesterday from Jalen Milroe. Those two seem to be developing much better chemistry here in the last 4 or 5 practices, and you're seeing him pop a lot more in the receiving game. And I expect in these preseason games that we're going to see a lot in terms of special teams contributions, as Ricky White III did at UNLV and previously at Michigan State. That has been a huge part of his game. It was one of the reasons the Seahawks invested a 7th round pick in him. Maybe tough sledding still to get onto the 53, but this is very much a player that is starting to show the skills that justified Seattle drafting him when they did, that may have a chance this year to contribute for the Seahawks at some point. Had a chance to chat with Ricky before their last training camp practice yesterday. Some really good insight on his first camp, getting to work with Jalen Milroe, and much more. Interviewed him with my good friend Maz Vida, just as we did with Jared Ivey. Take a listen to the interview here on Locked On Seahawks.
So, Ricky, early impressions here, first training camp. What's it been like for you?
It's really been a blessing, man. Just come out here, compete every day, work with my great quarterbacks. Just put on the show every time I can. Get the defense great looks, and, be the best version of myself.
What's it been like building chemistry with Jalen in particular, both of you guys being rookies coming in together, getting a lot of reps out of the field? What's that process been?
Man, God works in mysterious ways because during Combine, he was in my group, so he was one of my quarterbacks. So we got the time to meet each other during the Combine. And then also here, every day after practice, we taking mental reps together, getting those extra catches and just routinely throws, after practice. So.
And how exciting is that, just in terms of, kind of when he asked, bonding with that quarterback, and it's got to make you feel real good about the immediate and long-term future.
I would definitely say it's a great feeling, so there come, game day, we got that connection, that chemistry, and it's easy. The timing is there, what the catch point is, so it's a great feeling.
When you look at this scheme, how receiver-friendly is this offense compared to previous ones that you've played in?
It's definitely receiver-friendly. Like Coach K does a great job of getting his playmakers the ball. And I'm thankful for that, being a part of this organization, this club. And I just want to go in there and just do my part of my 111 every time I step on the field.
What makes it easier as a wideout for you in this system? I've talked to Jake Bobo and Drake Young, and they've mentioned just how much it mirrors with the run game and how much that eases trying to sell routes and being able to.
Man, they hit it on the spot. I feel like all of our routes mirror up, so it's hard for a defender to see different route concepts and everything like that. So it definitely helps, with the route running, and also, when it's time to block. I feel like we take a good, we come together as a unit, as receivers, to just do our 111.
Let me go back and just jump in. I think so. The reason why this offense is friendly, receiver friendly, is because of the route concept. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then what do you bring to this?
I bring, a dog, somebody that loves to go out and compete every down, someone that's physical. It's just a playmaker, really, all-around player. Not somebody that's just a catch first down. I definitely catch the ball and get upfield, get more yak.
What's been the biggest learning curve for you so far coming to the league and being in your first training camp? Has there been a welcome to the NFL moment yet for you?
I would definitely say just learning from my vets, someone like Coop, MPS, Jax. Those guys have established their role. They know how to manipulate DBs on certain routes, and I feel like being in the room with those guys, I definitely learned how to manipulate a DB on a certain route or run a certain route this type of way for this coverage. So I've learned so much from those guys.
Going back to his question, you're always going to be improving, but was there a moment that not you were awestruck but okay, now I've arrived and it's time for me to compete? Does that make sense?
Right.
Do you remember, was it the training camp, was it the preseason game?
I always had that in my mind. I love to compete. Yeah, so as a receiver, I feel like as any player coming into the NFL, you always have to compete for a spot. That's what you have to do at the end of the day. It's a business.
How important is mental toughness? I don't think that people understand in any position, but more wide receiver.
Man, I would definitely say in any position. Mental toughness is definitely like a key part of the game. And for your character, really, you just have to be very mentally strong, have to be able to adapt to new environments, all type of things plays into that. So it's definitely important.
You get some experience as a punt returner or kick returner last year at UNLV.
No, I didn't play either one.
What?
I didn't play kick returner.
Just punt return?
Yeah.
You get that experience, but now you get to come here. And Jay Harbaugh was talking about this with us yesterday, that there's different rules, you have the different hash marks. So what's it been like adjusting to the way that special teams is played in the National Football?
Really just learning the new rules that's different from the NFL, college, and applying this to my game. Really, I would definitely say that. It's been great to just learn from Coach Jay, Coach Fitz. Those guys are very smart and really locked into the details. I'm blessed to be able to learn from these guys.
As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. I'll be coming back tomorrow with a pregame show. We'll be dishing out some key storylines to watch heading into Seahawks versus Chiefs. So make sure that you listen in and, of course, enjoy the game later in the evening. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Go Hawks.